Uh, Thank you, Mr. Rosendale, for your questioning. I now call on Ms. Kaptur for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, very much, and also Ranking Member Bost and all of our very distinguished guests. I'm sorry to be late to join you. I didn't hear some of the full presentations because we couldn't get in, but we finally figured it out. So what's been running through my mind is recent history of our country over the last half century and the very complicated conflicts in which we've asked our young men and women to serve. If I think back to when I was first coming of age, the war in Vietnam, which to this day, our country has been very reluctant to investigate, to explore, to be honest about what happened in that conflict. I won't go into all of it. I have a dear veteran friend who's dying right now. He was in one of the early battles in '65, La Draine, and at Landing Zone Albany. And just to read the history, to go back and reflect on that, for those of you who lived through it, you know that we lost the draft, right? So now we have a volunteer military. It crippled a tradition of service to our country. And now with the Gulf Wars, I think to Timothy McVeigh and the Oklahoma City bombing and some of the materials that were found in his car and fighting in a conflict that obviously when he came home, I'm not making excuses for him in any way, but he acted out in an extremely violent way. I don't know if we'd had better care in our veterans facilities. We're short now for all of the mental health issues that vets are coming home with. Maybe we didn't do our job back in the 90s as a country. And then today now with Afghanistan, we are going to face similar issues with returning vets whose service must be respected in a very complex environment. So I think this last half century has really been a coming to terms of America with her foreign engagements. And I don't think that the country, and I'm not placing the blame on any person or any agency or any political party, I think that the public is unresolved about some of these situations and what they actually fought for and fought against. So I think we have a very large responsibility, goes beyond the mandate of this committee, but this committee could make a contribution to that. I just think this is it's a very atypical period of the United States, maybe America's coming of age in terms of understanding its role in the world. We're still the youngest democracy on earth, youngest republic on earth. So I suppose we can reflect on some of this history now and think how we can make it better. But I'm very concerned about, as we do so with our veterans and welcome them home and honor their service, how do we prepare? How do we better answer their questions about the worth of their service? Nobody can answer that question for me, who's with us today. But I think that is really is very, very important. And to place the last half century of service in some kind of context, I don't believe we're doing that as a country. And I'm interested in, for veterans, Timothy McVeigh actually had a Bronze Star. He was in his early 20s in his service. I think we have to go back and study some of that. I think we need to understand it better. And but what didn't exist back then that exists now, and this is my one question, in terms of malign influence by countries like Russia and China, what evidence do we have? I read about Russians involved with the NRA, for example, and funding certain things through the NRA. I want to know if that's true. I want to know about the malign influence operating on social media or through other organizations in our country that are helping to contribute to this radicalization, including among some of our veterans. A very small number, but nonetheless a very serious number of veterans. Who can elaborate a bit on material that might be available that we could read or become familiar with the hastening of radicalism because of malign foreign influence, and by whom?
I mean, just briefly, Representative, my discussions with U.S. intelligence officials in the current and the previous administration do indicate concern about Russian GRU, the Military Intelligence Directorate, as well as SVR, Russian Foreign Intelligence, that are significantly involved in dis and misinformation on digital platforms, particularly trying to spread violent ideologies inside of U.S. platforms, some of which is directed at those that are either serving currently in the U.S. military or are veterans. So happy to have a conversation since I see we're over time. But the GRU and the SVR are the two Russian intelligence organizations I'm most concerned about.
If you could give us any material that we could read, or I would appreciate that, Mr. Chairman, if you could provide those to the committee so we could explore a bit further.
I will request such materials. Thank you, Ms. Kaptur, for your question.